usual beginning reader, Ashnita. Can you want to read the last paragraph?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Krishna.
Sure. It is not possible for that one, right, Maharaj?
Yeah.
Okay. It is not possible for the Brahman realized impersonalist or the Paramatma realized yogi to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Yashoda or the charioteer of Arjuna. Even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Muyanti yat suraya. Mam tu veda na kaschana. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says. And if one does know him, then sa mahatma sadhurlabha. Such a great soul is very rare. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is, tatvataha, even though one is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities in Krishna, his being the cause of all causes, his omnipotence and opulence, and his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. He is the last word in Brahman realization, and the devotees alone can realize him as he is. Therefore, it is said, Ata Shri Krishna Namadina Bhavid Prayamendriya Sevun Mukhehi Jivadu Swayameva Spurati Yadav. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service unto him.
Okay. Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. Would it be 1, 2, almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah? Really close.
Yeah.
Any reflections on this paragraph? Anyone? Anything? Any come up to anyone? How do I say this? Anything coming open?
Maharaj.
Yes, George.
It's interesting to me because it just brings me, it grounds me, I guess. Am I getting puffed up? How it says even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. That stands out to me. I mean, because it's demigods, you know?
Yeah, we know the story of Brahma, the story of Indra, story of Shiva. You know, so many people become bewildered. So it's the fact that I was explaining that today in a lecture where he is saying that Krishna is inconceivable. And that means he's beyond our ability to, for the ordinary person to understand. Krishna is just, I mean, I remember one time, I don't know if you all know Nagaraj. He's the editor of Back to Godhead. And he was giving class in the Latra. This was back in the 90s when I had an ashram. We're really going back in history here. And he said, if you believe in God, you believe in something that's unbelievable because God is inconceivable. It's almost like believing in the unbelievable. And so the potency of Krishna, or the potency of having the association of Vaishnavas, which is something I was thinking about today a lot, that the association of Vaishnavas really has to be, how do you say it, sought out. We have to search out association. We have to really want association. We want to have the opportunity to have association with Vaishnavas and make a plan to associate with, especially advanced devotees. It's very important. But the demigods, they became bewildered. Brahma couldn't believe when he saw Krishna. Krishna was eating with his left hand. That's another thing. But anyway, Krishna was eating with his left hand a morsel of prasadam. And Brahma thought, how is that the little cowherd boy in Vrindavan? How is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Indra thought, how is this uppity young cowherd boy think that he's more important than me? And stopping the Indra Yagya. And so, so it's not unusual for one to be confused, to not be able to understand. And this is actually one of the I've mentioned this, I think, to this group before. Just like when we chant the Dhamma-darasakam prayers, Idam Ishwaram Satchidanand. In other words, you become Idam Somebody help me. Namam Ishvaram Satchit Anantarupam. Yeah. So Namam Ishvaram. In other words, they bring it out by saying that what we're talking about, although it's a little boy who's being chastised by his mother, being chased by his mother with a stick in her hand and tying him up to a wooden grinding mortar. And at the same time, we have to understand this is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, Namam Ishvaram Satchidan. He's the Supreme Ishwar, the Supreme Controller of everything. And to have these to understand God and with these types of pastimes and these types of activities, takes a lot. It takes quite a bit to come to that point. It's a good one, George. A good one. Anyone else with any feedback or any reflections on this part of the purport?
Well, Maharaj, that's this section. That sentence where it says, therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is. And it reminded me of something that Lavanga Mataji said last week about how it comes from the heart, because even though one is a great scholar or philosopher, that part kind of hit me also, because it's like it actually does take the heart. No matter if you have a master's, PhD, etc., you will not know Krishna.
Yeah.
And it correlates with me, because I remember in the beginning, I always was like George say, puffed off. It's like, I have always been an inquisitive person. I'm very scholarly, etc., etc. And I thought, okay, this is going to be easy, but no, it's not.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Anyone else? Okay. Go on to the next verse. Mantesh, wherever he is. He's hiding behind the herbs and spices.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah. So should we do the next verse?
Yes, Maharaj.
Anything else? Anybody? If no one, it's described here that, like George said, even the demigods are confused. So no one knows me as I am, and if one does so, Samahatma Sadurlabham, very, very great soul, come to that point of actually understanding Krishna. I was listening to the tape lecture I was listening to today. It probably was on the Juhu beach, and that Dr. Patel was there. And he was quoting verses. So probably would, he's quoting Bhagavad Gita verses, and so probably would have his disciples do word for word of the Bhagavad Gita verse that Dr. Patel just quoted, right? Just to get it, just to make sure that he understands exactly what he's saying. And he went through like 4 or 5 verses. And just to explain that you really have to go through the disciplic succession, and you have to have that mood of servitudeship to the Guru and to the Parampara in order for all these things to come through. Because as the verse says, Atashri Krishna Namari and the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that we can't understand Krishna by our blunt material senses. But he reveals himself to the devotee, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service to him. That transcendental loving service is the service of connection through a Guru Parampara. And without that, it probably gives the example that there's electricity in the outlet because it's connected to the powerhouse. And so unless we're connected to that powerhouse, we can't get the full understanding. And so this is part of the, what would you say, mystery or the secrets of Krishna consciousness to come to that proper understanding, is to really be plugged in properly to the disciplic succession.
So Maharaj, I was just thinking about what you just said about being plugged into the power, and we have to, be connected to the powerhouse. We can be connected to the powerhouse, and sometimes there's no power coming through, like we experienced a few months ago. So it's,
we weren't connected to the powerhouse. The powerhouse was down. We were disconnected from the powerhouse.
Well, there was no power coming through. So we have to make sure that we're in the right disciplic succession that has the power coming through. And we are, fortunately. The other point I was thinking is that today, because I gave class today, Srimad Bhagavatam class, and in the verse, in the purport, Prabhupada talks about like, Krishna has to be pleased with our efforts in order to give us transcendental loving service. And it's not mechanical, it's not through mechanical chanting and a mechanical doing devotional service, that it's done with actual like love. And so I guess that's a concept that I wrestle with every day, because on some level it's like ticking off the boxes, right? Chanted my 16 rounds, read Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's not about ticking off the boxes. Like I'm doing that so that I can revive that dormant love of God, but that dormant love of God is not going to come until I'm sincere enough in my efforts that Krishna gives me his mercy to.
But ticking off the boxes is not unimportant.
But it's not all there.
We don't want to minimize, but it has to, but that's one of the things. I'll give an example what Prabhupada did. I think it was one of the devotees in the beginning. I think it may have been Gargamuni. Told Prabhupada he didn't like to offer obeisances. And Prabhupada said, even if you don't like it, do it, because then you'll begin to understand and you'll begin to, like to do it and stuff like that. And so in the beginning, it's sadhana bhakti. In the beginning, it's sadhana bhakti, which awakens that loving sentiment in the heart. That's what's meant to be awakened. I think Ananteshwar has an addition because he turned his microphone off. But that's a good point. Very, very good point, Jack.
No, Maharaj, I don't.
You were?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. But just to go on with Jai Shri Radhe's a point, and that was what Prabhupada was doing, because he quoted that verse, Tesham Saktata Yuktanam Brajatam Prita Purvakam, that those who are constantly devoted to me, devoted to serving me with love and devotion, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So Prabhupada emphasized Satatam Yuktanam. He said, always engage, constantly. He gave the thing, not just 5 minutes a day, not just, he even said that famous thing that he said in LA, where he said, now he finished his 16 rounds, he put his beads, now I can do any damn thing. So he said that same thing on the beach. He said, just like you finish your 16 rounds and you think, now I'm finished, I can do whatever I want to do because my 16 rounds are done. Like you were saying, tick off the different boxes, but the heart's desire is to engage in all, say non-devotional activities. And so he was really, what was just, I don't want to say hammering, but would you say emphasizing to Dr. Patel that the heart has to change, that there has to be a change of heart. But it also comes through that sadhana bhakti. We have to be adherent to that sadhana, because that process of sadhana opens up that just like knowledge, that knowledge gives us the ability to renounce the material energy. Because when we understand ourselves not to be the body, to be part and parcel of Krishna as an eternal soul that's distinguished from this body, then the pushings of the body, vacha vegamana sakrita vegam jiva vegam uttara pasta vegam, the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the pushings of the tongue, belly, and genitals, when we understand that we're not any of those things, but those demands aren't us, that the demand of the spirit soul is different, then this becomes, through that knowledge, it becomes easier to come to the point of like renouncing the things of the material world and then being able to engage fully in the devotional service of the Lord. Very important point, Jay. Very, very important. One of my favorite ones is the end of that purport for Tesham Sattata Yuktanam. And I'm going to read it. I've only read it 1,000 times in this group. A person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization. But if he is still not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him his instructions so he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. So Krishna comes into play here through that always being engaged. Yukta satata. Satata means always, and yuktanam means connected to Krishna, but that connection, rajatam, through the devotional rendering of devotional service, and pritapurvakam in loving ecstasy. Prabhupada translate that pritapurvakam as loving ecstasy. So the qualification, Prabhupada says here, is a person always engages himself in Krishna consciousness and with love and devotion renders all kinds of service. He should perform some sort of work for Krishna, and that work should be with love. And it's really, unless we know Krishna, it's hard to love him. There's an old song from the 50s or 60s, to know you is to love you. I won't sing the whole song. To know you is to love you. And when it comes to Krishna, we can say, I do. Huh? We can do the I do part. Materially, we won't do that, but spiritually, we can say, I do. We do love Krishna. It's just covered a little bit. Anything else come up from this purport? Okay, so we go to the next one, number 4. Very famous verse. Bhumanapo anovayu kamam padevacha ahankara vida itam yam me vina pakati astatam. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, altogether these 8 constitute my separated material energies. So some volunteer to read the purport. Who's our volunteer? Anybody not working? George, okay.
The science of God analyzes the constitutional position of God and his diverse energies. Material nature is called prakriti, or the energy of the Lord. Prakriti, thank you, Guru Maharaj. Prakriti, or the energy of the Lord in his different Purusa incarnations, expansions, as described in the Sattva Tantra. For material creation, Lord Krishna's plenary expansion assumes 3 Vishnus. The first one, Mahavishnu, creates the total material energy known as Mahat Tattva. The second,
Dakshayi
Vishnu, enters into all the universes to create diversities in each of them. The third,
Shiradakshayi
Vishnu, is diffused as the all-pervading supersoul in all the universes and is known as Paramatma, who is present even within the atoms. Anyone who knows these 3 Vishnus can be liberated from material entanglement.
Well, that's a good sign. We can be delivered from material entanglement.
Mm-hmm.
Any reflections on this part? This was actually a lecture. Prabhupada gave this in the lecture when Rupa was massaging my head today. We were listening to this lecture. Prabhupada really went through it very, very step by step. Krishna, it's amazing how Krishna arranges it. Any reflections on this from the group? One of the things that I hadn't, I may have heard but don't remember hearing was that this Karna Dakshayi Vishnu, what is it? Is it saying here? Does it say Karna Dakshayi? Oh, this says Mahavishnu. Karna Dakshayi Vishnu, Karna, the causal form. He creates the universes. So sometimes it said it's through the breathing, and sometimes it said through the pores of his body, but probably says through the breathing of the pores. We have an Ayurvedic doctor, and we have a regular. What do you call a regular doctor? My guru doctor's an MD. She's a DO. So do the pores breathe? When pores breathe? Yeah. So when Krishna's pores breathe, universes come out. And Prabhupada says that we sweat. He said that so Karna Dakshayi Vishnu comes from it comes from the four quadruples, three times, quadruple three times. Then comes Karanadakshayi Vishnu. Karanadakshayi Vishnu expands himself into Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. And this Garbhodakshayi Vishnu enters into all the universes. And then from his own perspiration, half the universe is filled up with water. So on that lecture, Prabhupada was saying that we may be able to sweat 1 gram. Then he said, well, maybe we can sweat 1 ounce. So if we can sweat 1 ounce, why can't Krishna sweat a whole ocean? But our sweat and Krishna sweat's a lot different. I remember both Rupa and I were thinking, the same way. Our perspiration here is not so pleasant, but Krishna's perspiration is quite unique in that sense. And then from that Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, Brahma takes that lotus stem, comes from the navel of Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, and all the planetary systems are within that lotus stem. And then Brahma takes birth on the top of the lotus stem, and he's known as Aja, the unborn, because he has no mother. He just comes from Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. There's no interaction with material energy there. And then Garbhodakshayi Vishnu expands himself into Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, and Prabhupada said he enters into each and every atom, what to speak of each and every individual soul. So it was explaining that the soul, he quotes that verse, and I don't know that you take one, the soul is 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair. So you take the tip of a hair and you divide it into 100, and you take one of those parts and you divide that into 100, and you get to 1/10,000th. So that's the size of the soul. And then he said, Prabhupada said, then the super soul enters into that. It's even smaller than the individual soul. There's one place where it says he's the size of a thumb. The super soul is the size, and then in one place he says he's the size like almost 6 inches. But so just knowing it, that just the fact that we have this type of understanding, and then Prabhupada went into the point where he was just where there was a class. I think Rina Nenamars gave this at a university once before, back in the 80s, and it was the same point that Prabhupada said. It's just like Darwin has his theory that there was a chunk, but he says that is not fact. That is just theory. And he said Darwin even wrote in a letter to his friend, "This is just my thought. This is what I'm thinking. This is my speculation." I think was the word he used in the letter. And so sometimes we'll say, which sounds more fantastic? Just like Prabhupada, it's like a lot of times when Prabhupada gives class, if you see, it's the same points are always brought up, but they're always good to hear over and over again. And so that point of this, the scientists say there was nothing, and then there was something, and then there was a bang, and then there was amoebas, and there was protozoas, and then there was fish, and then there was alligators, and then there was monkeys, and then we come from the monkeys, etc., etc. It's a story, and we have our story, that there's a supreme personality of Godhead from whom everything comes, and then he expands himself and expands himself and expands himself to the point where here we are. One is not any more fantastic than the other. And Prabhupada was saying that they say there's chunk, but what created the chunk? So they may say what created God, and then for Sarvakarna Karna, he's the cause of all causes. This is where it stops. And that's one of the meanings of God. In other words, the meaning of, or the nature of God is he has no other cause other than himself. And so to ask who created God is, you can't ask that because it's outside of the realm of questioning, because God is self-created. I thought I'd just throw in that little lecture I heard earlier. Anyone have any takeaways from this part of the verse?
Maharaj, in particular part starts that how that it is a science of God.
Mm.
That Prabhupada makes it clear it's not a fairy tale.
Mm.
Because in the verse itself it talks about earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So I was hearing one lecture and the devotee was saying it is when we hear all these things, it's very easy for the mind to flicker around and to get diverted in a cosmos. And then Prabhupada brings it right from the first line of the purport.
Mhm.
He said Prabhupada talks right he says the science of God analyzes the constitutional position of God and his divine and his diverse energies. So Prabhupada brings the point wherein he's connecting the energies with God. He's not making them independent,
Mm.
as the modern scientists do.
Yeah, good point. Very good. The science that like in the back of the Gita, it said it. Does it say? Does it still say it here? Oh, it doesn't say it anymore. It has a different thing on the back. It used to say that the science of God realization, the science of self-realization. I can't remember exactly what it used to say. And so, yeah, very good point, Ananteshwar. It brings it down to a point where we don't separate the material energy. You know, like they want to separate it all out and try to make what would you say, sense out of it. But you can't make sense out of it. What it probably was, he was saying that everything is operating very, very orderly. How is it that so much order comes from disorder? You know, we don't see that happening anywhere. There's always when there's order, there's always somebody behind. Even when there's disorder, there's usually that's another point. We'll skip that side. But yeah, there's always a person behind it. There's something behind it. I would say there's a machine, but there's a machine operator. There's a powerhouse, but there's an electrical engineer behind the powerhouse. Any other, what do we call them? Reflections, takeaways, thoughts? Okay.
Oh, well, we were saying earlier, to know him is to love him, but Krishna, and this is just really cool how it's all broken down, and you don't get this kind of broken, detailed information anywhere other than in the Vedas. So it's like, we've said that many times that we have the most detailed description of God, and this is just one of the more, very detailed version of the creation story.
Yeah.
And another thing I was thinking of is like the kind of the Western scientific method is to take things apart and analyze things separately. But you were saying like it's all about how it's brought together, how it's synthesized. It's not it's not things working on their own. It's how they work in synthesis with one another. So that was my thought.
Good. Anyone else? We have two more guests. I forgot to introduce Vishaka Saki from Harrisburg and her sister Brenda. Very nice devotees, both in college, and their parents were. I've known them since 1998, a long time, since before Vishaka's. Everybody just calls her Saki. And before she was even born, and right after Brenda was born, I knew when she was a little girl about that big. I used to pinch her. Of course, I used to pinch her. But anyway, welcome to our reading and what do you call it? Takeaway reflections group. Volunteer to read the next paragraph. Rajavami.
Yeah. Excuse me, my allergies are kicking, so let me try. This material world is a temporary manifestation of one of the energies of the Lord. All the activities of the material world are directed by the three Vishnu expansions of Lord Krishna. These producers are called incarnations. Generally, one who does not know the science of God, Krishna, assumes that this material world is for the enjoyment of the living entities, and that the living entities are the Purushas. the causes, controllers, and enjoyers of the material energy. According to Bhagavad Gita, the atheistic conclusion is false. In their verse under discussion, it is stated that Krishna is the original cause of the material manifestation. Srimad Bhagavatam also confirms this. The ingredients of the material manifestation are separated energies of the Lord. Even the Brahmayoti, which is the ultimate goal of the impersonalists, is the spiritual energy manifested in the spiritual sky. There are no spiritual diversities in the Brahmayoti as there are in the Vaikuntha Lokas, and the impersonalists assess this Brahmayoti as the ultimate eternal goal. The Paraatma manifestation is also temporary, all-pervasive aspect of the Kishoradakshaya Vishnu. The Paramatma manifestation is not eternal in the spiritual world. Therefore, the factual absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He is the complete energetic person, and he possesses different separate and internal energies. And this is going to take a lot to digest because it's a lot for me, Maharaj. Help
Yeah,
us.
it is a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just kind of zoom. It's too much for me. Help.
Yeah, what should we do? Anyone have some thoughts or takeaways from this?
Raj, I was thinking before when you were even with just the first paragraph, just like Rajabhumi Prabhu said, I feel like a lot of times a lot of what I kind of think of as the technical stuff is a lot for me. And sometimes I feel like I shy away from it just because I feel like it's too overwhelming, and I'm more attracted to what I perceive as matters of the heart. Like as in the previous verse, I felt like, especially when Rajabhumi was talking about what Lavanya was saying last week about how the devotees and what they're attracted to, the loving devotional service, and those kind of matters I feel like I'm more inclined to. So is it so crucial to understand this to really go deeper, or is it just that I'm afraid?
Well, I can't say whether or not you're afraid, but I can quote one thing. And a similar question was asked to Srila Prabhupada in Australia. And the person, I don't know, I think they were studying the third canto. I can't remember exactly where it was. And one of the devotees says, I get so confused when we talk about all these kind of things. And Prabhupada said, don't worry, you can just chant Hare Krishna. He said, don't worry, this, if you're in, see, this kind of, it's not that this stuff is just there for the scientifically minded people or for the analytical minded people. This is there to give us, some root, like Lavanga was saying, like some root understanding of the cause beyond the causes and stuff like that. And even if we have a general idea of it, that's fine, because if it leads us to engaging in the loving devotional service of the Lord. But if we have an inquisitive mind or a curious mind, and it's not that one has to have a curious mind or not have a curious mind, we should be curious. Why are we here? What are we for? Why am I suffering? That kind of curiosity is like Atata Brahma Jignasa. That's the first point we have to come to where we question our position in the world. But to understand, like, time calculated from the atom. I mean, I read that chapter in the Bhagavatam. I probably went to the Bhagavatam a dozen times in my life. And when I get to that point, time calculated from the atom, it's, what do they call those little, what do they call it? It's like the little partial seconds. What do they call it? Ananteshwar, they're called, what's that word?
Anu.
Yeah, right. Then so many of those make this, and so many the next things make a second. I mean, keep all that stuff in your brain. If you don't have that type of brain, it becomes a burden. But if you do have that kind of brain, then when you give class, everybody thinks, whoa, that guy's got a brain. And when other people give a class, they'll say, whoa, that person has a heart. And, but the person with the brain also has a heart. And the person with the heart also has a brain. And so we need the courage. I guess we're getting into, what's that thing? What's that thing where the Tin Man and the lion and the, what is that?
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz, yeah. And so we need courage, we need a heart, and we need, what do we need? What's the other one? Brain? A brain, thank you. Yeah, we need and we don't need the Wizard of Oz is something different. We need Krishna. We need Krishna. So it's okay, Sri Rupa Manjari. Take as much as you can digest and utilize it in the service of Krishna. Engage in the devotional service of the Lord with love from the heart. Yeah, it's kind of weird, kind of trying to think, do we just analyze everything at every moment, or do we just try to give the heart? We try to give the heart. Yeah. A moment of pause here just for this purport here. Because as you say, it's kind of, yeah, we can understand that Krishna has separated energies. That simple fact, that there's material energy, there's external energy, there's internal energy, and there's marginal energy. Just to understand those three aspects, that we're the marginal energy, and we're either under the control of the internal or the external. And so when we find ourselves under the external energy of the Lord, then we have to work on getting back into the internal energy of the Lord. And that is through the process of sadhana. Sadhana is so important. Some other takeaways. Okay.
Well, I just have a question. Is there like an anchor chart, a visual, a diagram of all this that can break it down for us?
That I think that part, where are we at here? I mean, you can find that probably, and my guess is on the cover of the first canto. Cover of the first canto has everything. And when you look at it, when you get into Goloka Vrindavan, it's split in half. There's the left and right side. And the left, one of them is Goloka Vrindavan, another one is not. I mean, this really gets technical, where Lord Chaitanya is and that aspect of what do you call it, Navadvip Mandala, is also part of Braj Bhumi. What do you call it? Goloka Vrindavan. There's two sections, and so.
Yeah, I need the label section.
You can just take the first canto and take a look at it, although you probably won't be able to figure it out. But I know some of the backs, everything is on my tablet now, and I read on the tablet. I don't use the books. Very seldom I use the books. But I remember some of the books have diagrams in the back. I know, like in the fifth canto, it has like a diagram of like the planets and stuff like that. And you'd have to take a look when you get into
Rajabhumi. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Maharaj. And not that was a plug for where I work at, but at Krishna Culture, we actually have a very nice poster that is very visual and diagrams everything. If you'd
And
like, I can send you one.
Sri Rupa Mataji knows what I'm talking about. Like, anchor charts like we use at school. And when, they don't get it, we go even a scaffolding a little bit lower.
Yeah.
So that will be nice to have.
Yeah, visual is easier for us than audio. Hearing is audio, but hearing is also proof. One of the things we've often discussed in this group, that hearing is also proof. We have to see that. We have to see that. We have to hear that. So George, next time if you ever go up there where you used to work, I don't know if you're still working. But,
I started working there. I do work there now again. I got my job back.
You're breaking up, George. I could sing that song too.
Oh, he works there again. I know that.
Oh, okay.
George get rehired. I just want to say, I'm obviously a heart kind of person. Yeah. But all these details, like, even though, I know they're there, and I take some comfort in that, because like sometimes if you wonder, like, is this the absolute truth? Well, yeah, it is. And I don't have to understand it, but I just knowing it's there gives me a certain level of comfort. You know, knowing how complete all this information is. I don't have to understand it for it to be true. So that's where, like, you know, because I can't make heads or tails of it either.
You don't have to understand it to be true, and then Teshwar.
I don't have to, you know, me understanding it doesn't qualify something to be true or not. That's for sure.
Yeah. So Maharaj, during my initial reading of Prabhupada books, when like I had an vision, not a vision, but I was trying to challenge where Prabhupada can go wrong. And every time I felt defeated. And this verse was one of those. And this is how I analyzed it, that in the first in the first paragraph, I mean in the first line itself, Prabhupada says the science of God analyzes the constitutional position of God in diverse energies. And then in the second paragraph, Prabhupada says this material world is temporary manifestation of one of the energies of the Lord. And he ends with saying that the Paramatma manifestation is not eternal in the spiritual world. Therefore, the factual absolute truth is the supreme personality of Krishna, of Godhead Krishna. He is complete energetic person and he possesses different separated and internal energies. So in other words, Prabhupada knew how to bring everything around and to Krishna. And for me, this was one of the verse which like focused. If you want to know Krishna, here is it. You have to go all over the place. And I was kind of fascinated how Prabhupada put the things. And even if you know this, I mean, the third paragraph would be also around the same theme.
Nice, isn't it?
Yes, Maharaj.
Is it confidence, Lavangla, or is it comfort?
Is what?
You said it gives you comfort. Is it also
Comfort, yeah, like knowing that I mean that because I growing up Catholic, there's so many of my questions that weren't answered because they didn't have the answer. So it's like now I've come to where I come to a place where all my questions can be answered, but it's funny that it's kind of like the opposite then. I know the answers are there.
So is that comfort or confidence?
Comfort. Like, because I don't have to worry about any question not being answered.
So you're confident of your answers.
Confident that I can be comforted. Yeah. I don't have to be afraid that there's not going to be an answer. Because
there you go. There's where Sri with the Manjari is. Her fear is now finished.
Yeah, you know, because there won't ever be a question that can't be answered.
You're confident in your comfort.
Comfort, yes, both. Yeah.
I think it makes me think, like for medicine, if I'm sick and I'm going to take medicine, I don't need to know how it works, right? I just need to know that I take it, and somebody else more qualified than I know that the ways that it works, right? So
like how it works.
I have confidence in that, so it's okay.
Yeah. And comfort.
That's the Prabhupada makes that, you know, you'll take some medicine, you don't know how it's working, you just know the result. Or just like when you eat, he said a hungry person may not know how he's being nourished. He just knows that they just know that they're satisfied. They know that something's going on. It's giving me energy. It's giving me this. It's giving me that. And so to know, you know, how what do you call those things? The enzymes and the mitochondria, or whatever those little guys are doing down there. But just to know how they're all. I mean, imagine if you ate. This is what it's like. You know, Gayatri's not here, so I can say this is what it's like in China. Everything you eat in China, they tell you what medicine it is. So medicinal purpose to eat. Is that
See,
how
like,
Ayurvedic doctors eat Ananteshwar? They eat they eat
I
a
have
poison.
OCD, so it's just like, for me, it's like I have to know, like, and before I take the medicine, I do the research, like, what are you putting in my body? So because of my OCD. So
OCN.
that's why not knowing or understanding it becomes anxiety for me.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm the
I
opposite of
call
Lavanga. I
it
find no
OCN.
comfort with not be able to visualize it. So just pray for me.
Should we finish the paragraph? The last one? We got 12 minutes. We got 11 minutes.
Yes, Maharaj.
We have a volunteer for readers. Our next teacher.
In the material energy, the principal manifestations are 8, as above mentioned. Out of these, the first 5 manifestations, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, are called the 5 gigantic creations or the gross creations, within which the 5 sense objects are included. They are the manifestations of physical sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Material.
These correlate. That's why you guys, just everyone knows that physical sound is ether, physical touch is air, physical form is fire, physical taste is water, and physical smell is earth. That's where that's the corresponding. That's how they correspond. They're matched up like that. Continue on.
Material science comprises these 10 items and nothing more. But the other 3 items, namely mind, intelligence, and false ego, are neglected by the materialists. Philosophers who deal with mental activities are also not perfect in knowledge because they do not know the ultimate source, Krishna. The false ego, I am, and it is mine, which constitute the basic principle of material existence, include 10 sense organs for material activities. Intelligence refers to the total material creation called Mahatattva. Therefore, from the 8 separated energies of the Lord are manifest the 24 elements of the material world, which are the subject matter of Shankaya atheistic philosophy. They are originally offshoots from Krishna's energies and are separated from him. But atheistic Shankaya philosophers with a poor fund of knowledge do not know Krishna as the cause of all causes. The subject matter for discussion in the Shankaya philosophy is only the manifestation of the external energy of Krishna as it is described in the Bhagavad Gita.
Well, it's a powerful purport, isn't it? Whew. So can we count up to 24? Oh, Brajabhumi, is that your hand up? Yeah, you bump your computer. Your hand is up, Brajabhumi.
No, my
Oh,
hair is wet and I was pulling my hair.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
You hit the reactions to put your hand up. A little yellow hand is up.
Oh, no, that's been there. Let me remove it.
Hmm. So any takeaways, any reflections on this?
Maharaj,
Yes.
yeah, as I was saying in this paragraph also, Prabhupada, the way Prabhupada concludes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
he's trying to say, don't bother yourself with the Sankhya philosophy.
Don't what?
Don't bother yourself with the Sankhya philosophy.
Yeah.
He says the subject matter for discussion in the Sankhya philosophy is only the manifestation of the external energy of Krishna. And as it is described in Bhagavad Gita. So
There's
again,
one verse in the Gita that says the Satya Sankhya and it's the same.
yeah. So again,
Because-
Prabhupada is bringing everything towards Krishna.
Hmm. So the conclusion of Sankhya, when you get finally to the 24 elements, then you come to the 25th and the 26th. And the problem is, one of the things probably brings up the 24 elements. We're going to go through them. We can go earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, then the sound, the touch, the taste. So you got 5 more. So now we're up to whatever. And then you got the 5 working senses, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses. You add it all up, you get to 24 birth, you get the material modes, effects of them. And so when you get to the point where you realize that everything is, none of those material elements, nothing of that is me. I'm something distinct and separate from those 24 things. So what am I? I'm a spiritual energy. And there's one purport, I don't know where it's at, where Prabhupada says, unless one has a bona fide spiritual master in the succession of personalism, they will mistake themselves to be the super soul. It's having the bona fide spiritual master that allows one to separate themselves from being the cause of all causes, the impersonal. I am God. I am God. Prabhupada was. Oops, I get turned on. Prabhupada was explaining that today in that lecture I was listening to, how these impersonalists, when he gets a chance to get on the impersonalists, especially when he's in India, he really opens up on them, and he just cut right through everything, and said he was bringing up some idea, some guru that gets gold. He says, where is the source of all gold? It's just the source of all gold. And so the point is, we come to that point where we understand there's something separate from this material body. What is it? It's not material, it's spiritual. So in order to not mistake ourselves to be that super soul inside, we have the benefit of this ecliptic succession of Krishna consciousness that we have that allows us to understand that process. Otherwise, we can become confused. One of the things that intelligence refers to the total material creation called the Mahatattva. That is a very short explanation of intelligence refers to the total material creation called the Mahatattva. Therefore, the 8 separated energies of the Lord are manifested 24 elements of the 24 elements of the material world, which are the subject matter of Sankhya atheistic philosophy. They originally offshoots from Krishna's energy and are separated from him. I'm going to look into that a little bit. Any thoughts on how the intelligence refers to the total material creation called the Mahatattva? Oh, I see it. Because Mahatattva includes all the 24 elements plus the spiritual energy. And so that's true. And okay, I got it. Without that, the Mahatattva leads us to the proper understanding. Mahatattva is a total, what do you call it? Creative source. Is how that would be a way of saying it. Mahatattva is a total creative source of that comes from the, how do you say that word? Pradana? Is that how you say that word? Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit into my brain here, so sorry about that one. Trying to figure that out. As Brajabhumi says, we have OCN. I don't like it when she says OCD. I like obsessive compulsive nature. We're not really, just we're to the point where everything has its place, everything has to be in its place, and we have to discover everything on our own. We have 2 minutes, Jai Shri Radhe.
I wanted to kind of go back and touch upon the discussion we were having on the description of creation, right? From Karuna Dakashai Vishnu to Garbha Dakashai Vishnu to
Shira Dakshai Vishnu.
Shira Dakashai Vishnu, yes. So I remember last year, was maybe the year before, I just started giving class, Srimad Bhagavad class, and then I had this verse that talked about creation, and I think I had a big discussion with you because I was like, I don't understand this. I have to break this down in order to give class in it. Like, I don't understand it well enough myself. And that poster that George was referring to I think Lavanga has it. So I like looked at that, and I was really like, I really like studied so many things just to kind of figure it out, made up a chart, and, you know, I mean, what I came to the conclusion was kind of similar to Lavanga. It's there, the knowledge is there. And I think it's kind of like the foundation of my faith, right? Like, without knowing that that knowledge is there, I don't know that I would have as much faith in Krishna and what we're reading about that I do, because like, it's so wild. Like, who can make this stuff up, right? Like, Krishna breathes, you know, universes out of his pores and sweats an ocean. Like, it's just so wild. Like, who makes it up? Nobody makes it up. And then it reminded me, because what I talked about in that class is that Tamal Krishna Goswami, my guru, said in a lecture that this material creation is only 1/4 of the entire like spiritual world, you know, is 3/4 of it. So this universe and galaxies upon galaxies, as vast as spaces, is only 1/4. And then
That's just one universe, and there's billions and billions of universes.
Right. And that's even just all of that together is just 1/4 of the entire creation, including the spiritual world. And then that reminded me of that. I think Srila Prabhupada said to Tamal Krishna Goswami, like, there's, I'll read it, is in The Servant of the Servant. Prabhupada began to explain the plan of the creation. First, he pointed to where Krishna was and described how the entire creation was an extension of Krishna's energy. The Vaikuntha planets, broad and effulgent, were unlimited in number. Then Prabhupada pointed to the corner of the painting where the material world was situated. Mahavishnu is lying down there, and millions of universes emanate from his skin holes. Prabhupada said, each universe is filled with unlimited numbers of living entities who inhabit all of the planets and stars. One of these planets is our Earth, and on this planet are...
This is such a famous quote.
And on one continent, there's America. And in America, there are so many big cities. Here's Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, there's a street, La Cienega Boulevard. On this boulevard, among all of the buildings, is a temple of the Lord Krishna. In this temple, there is one Tamal Krishna. He is there and is thinking that he is very important.
Such a famous quote, isn't it? I mean, it have to be Tamal Krishna Maharaj that Srila Prabhupada would say that to, isn't it? Okay, we actually did a verse and a quarter, a verse and a third today, saying all-time records. Next week we get to talk about the superior energy, or I guess there's another superior energy, the marginal energy. We'll get to that next week. I hope you all have a very happy Ram Navami. Navani. How do you say that? They say Ram Nomi, but it's Ram Navani, right?
Navami.
Yeah, I get it mixed up sometimes.
We pronounce it
Yeah.
Navami, like you said.
And according to the Hare Krishna calendar, we fast until sunset. According to Ayodhya, they fast until noon. In Ayodhya, they fast until noon. On Nitai Gaur Sundar, he usually comes on Tuesdays for the first half hour. He's from Ayodhya, or he's from Naimisharanya. Anyway, from someplace like that.